Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Hilary Booth and I'm a naturopathic doctor, and welcome to my video blog. Today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people use in their everyday lives and incorporate into their diets as a way of trying to be healthier. But as we're going to find out, it's actually not the case. So artificial sweeteners are touted as a way of getting that sweet flavor without getting the calories. So this can include anything from stevia to your sweet and low, any of those types of sweeteners that you might be supplementing your regular diet with. But what are they really doing to your body? I dug up a whole bunch of research and I kind of teased it all out for you, and I'm going to explain it in this blog. So, research is showing that artificial sweeteners can actually cause diabetes and blood sugar dysregulation, obesity, and hormone imbalances, just to name a few, which seems kind of ridiculous when you think about it. You should be thinking that, well, sugar causes all those things, so something that doesn't give me any calories from that sweet taste shouldn't do that. And I'm going to explain a little bit about why that's not the case. So, first of all, the connection between artificial sweeteners and your brain is really, really interesting. So, food brings us feelings of pleasure and reward. We get happiness and joy when we eat something sweet. And this is basically because the brain wants to encourage us to feed the body. It gives us a sort of primal and primitive instinct to eat to stay alive. So, this food reward system has two parts. The first part of it is called the sensory part, and the second part is called the post-ingestive part. So the sensory part is basically we derive pleasure from the sight, smell, and taste of food. So as soon as something sweet hits our tongues, for example, we get a message sent from our tongue to our brain saying, hey, this is so great, we're going to get something sweet, so we get a pleasure response from that to encourage us to eat more of whatever it is that we're eating. The post-ingestive one is where we come to the sort of trouble with all these artificial sweeteners. So post-ingestive means that we derive pleasure in our brains from getting calories absorbed into the bloodstream. So the reason is that our brain feeds on sugar. So the brain strictly rewards the body for eating things with sugar in it. So that sense of joy or reward is what we experience when we eat something sweet. So that's why when you're upset or nervous or stressed, you tend to crave those more sweet things rather than craving something like a chicken breast. So artificial sweeteners don't actually activate that second part of the pathway, that post-ingestive reward system. So we eat the artificial sweeteners, we get that, ooh, this tastes sweet response from the tongue to the brain. Our brain is like, hey, great, we're going to be getting some calories to it, and your brain gets ready. So we get part of that signal. And interestingly, that signal is really, really strong because artificial sweeteners are between 300 to 7,000 times more sweet than normal sugars. Anyway, so when the artificial sugar gets into the stomach, you don't get that caloric release. So because of that lack of expected feeding or calories getting to the brain, the food reward system is uncoupled. And as a result, this leads to increased appetite because we're trying to seek more food to actually satisfy the second part of the equation, which is feeding the brain. And we also eat more to try to obtain that pleasure and reward feeling that we're used to getting from regular sugars that we're not getting when the brain isn't being fed. So this cycle in and of itself leads to obesity and blood sugar dysregulation. But in addition, the super sweet sweeteners encourage sugar cravings and sugar dependence. Studies show that people tend to choose lower nutrient food options when they have been exposed to artificial sweeteners. So that's how it relates to our brain, and that's sort of all the technical stuff. I want to chat next about how artificial sweeteners affect our hormones, because they do that as well. So even after just 7 days, only 7 days of artificial sweetener consumption, the body starts to show signs of impaired glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity. So this means if you switch to something like Diet Coke, you're not getting those calories anymore and you think you're being healthier. But even just 7 days of drinking Diet Coke or other diet type things, diet yogurts have this sort of artificial sweetener as well in them, we're getting impaired glucose tolerance. This is basically this regulation, when it's impaired, it can lead to obesity and type 2 diabetes. It's a pre-diabetic state is what we call it in the medical community. So only after a week you can get a pre-diabetic state from having Diet Coke. It's important to note that insulin resistance also plays a causative role in lots and lots of other conditions, including Alzheimer's disease, which is a hot topic for lots of people, including infertility, It can cause breast cancer, autoimmune diseases, and heart disease, because all of our hormones are interconnected like this whole web. So as soon as we get insulin resistance and glucose intolerance and that pathway comes off balance, the other ones start to become off balance as well. The next thing I'm going to chat about is the relationship between artificial sweeteners and weight loss. So again, you're choosing those diet foods as a way of losing weight. You switch to sugar-free alternatives or Diet Coke or low-fat yogurts that are sweetened in other ways. But a multitude of large-scale research studies have found that in both children and in adults, artificial sweetener use is associated with obesity and with weight increase over time, which is totally counterintuitive, right? So this is found to be true in normal populations and in populations who are actively trying to lose weight. So people who are trying to lose weight are actually gaining weight when they switch to artificial sweeteners. So interestingly, substituting artificial sweeteners for their regular calorie versions actually resulted in modest weight loss in those people who are trying to lose weight. So stick to your regular sugars. Artificial sweeteners and your gut bacteria is the next point of research that I want to chat with you about. A really interesting and sort of earth-shaking study that was published in Nature, which is a hugely esteemed and revered journal, basically showed that artificial sweeteners negatively impact and alter the composition and the function of your gut flora, meaning the bacteria that live in your gut. So this is kind of crazy. So the significant differences were found between the gut bacteria in people who didn't eat artificial sugars and those who did. Now, this altered gut composition of the bacteria that are living there can lead to compromised immune function. It can lead to food intolerances, insulin resistance, like we already spoke about before, can lead to autoimmune conditions, and altered serotonin function, which can lead to anxiety and depression, and altered appetite sensations from the brain to the body. So science has really just hit the tip of the iceberg here when it comes to learning about the gut bacteria. But if we do know that gut bacteria plays a role in all these aspects of our lives, and normal bodily functions as well as altered gut flora can cause tons of diseases and illnesses. This article is profound because it shows us that in altering our gut bacteria just from artificial sweeteners, we can have profound effects on tons and tons of illnesses and disease. So I would say that the best bottom line from this research study is that this article called for the reassessment of the widespread use of artificial sweeteners, meaning that they want the government to actually reassess whether or not these things are safe for us to be eating, and I totally agree with that. One final note is about stevia. I had a really great question from a patient about stevia, and I wanted to pass that information along to you. So stevia does not impair blood glucose tolerance, and it does not cause insulin resistance. Studies also show that stevia does not cause infertility or inflammation. However, it is unknown whether or not stevia affects the bacteria and flora living in the gut. So I would guess that because the gut processes sugars differently than the human body does, that I would proceed with caution because there is no actual research to show us that it is safe. So I like to proceed with caution and say that it may not be safe for the gut bacteria. It also still negatively impacts that brain to body connection we were talking about before. So again, that two-step pleasure and reward system, only the first step being the taste of sweet is being satiated with stevia, and the second step, meaning that we're actually getting the calories from the sweet to the brain, is not being met with stevia. So again, you're going to have overeating, increased sugar cravings, and an increased appetite with stevia use. So what's the bottom line here with all of this? Artificial sweeteners are not a better alternative to the real thing. As with most things in life, there is no easy way to get around getting the calories that come with sugar intake. If you are going to include sugar as part of your diet, it's best to go with the natural alternatives, the full calorie, non-diet version. This means things like agave and maple syrup and honey are way better alternatives than your artificial sweeteners. My best advice, though, would be to minimize your sugar altogether and sticking with those natural, unrefined versions of sugar should you choose to indulge. So I hope you learned something from my video this week. As always, if you have any questions or you'd like to book an appointment with me, you can go to my website at www.drshaunaderoux.com or you can call the clinic. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and have a great day.